Our hero is a medic named Rakil, who has suffered severe losses due to a coronavirus. One fateful day, standing on a bridge, he accidentally falls and dies, after which he finds himself in another world. As it turned out, the hero was reborn in the world of the novel he had already read in his life. In addition, he was sick, so he had to perform a very complicated operation on himself. But that's not all. Let's go back to the beginning to find out the details of what's going on. The hero is looking at reviews on his phone. His clinic has failed because of the coronavirus. He is mired in debt and is standing near a bridge with a bottle of alcohol. He is very angry at people and doesn't understand why exactly his clinic got into this situation. He falls off a bridge, wondering why the sky is under his feet. He thinks about being a Korean doctor and ponders if something is about to happen. The system sends a notification that he is getting extra health for his internal organs and the XP system. He opens his eyes and doesn't realize where he is. There is an employee standing in front of him, some kind of strange man. He looks around and realizes that he is not in a hospital, but in some strange room with medieval furniture. He looks at this furniture, and the clerk starts to cry. The hero doesn't recognize him, which makes him even more upset. He introduces himself as Garden, his personal physician. The hero asks for some water. He drinks and realizes that the glass he is drinking from is completely cut with 23 full diamonds. The hero looks in the mirror and realizes that it is not his body. He chokes on the water and realizes that it is not his face, and apparently he has entered someone else's body. He remembers the name Rakil Adria Mongitano. He looks at the card and realizes it's a novella he read the day he had a drink at work. He remembers it's a character from the book. He punches himself in the face, but it doesn't help him wake up. Now he finally realizes that this is not a dream, and he has really become a character from Rakiri's novel. He realizes that his mountains of debt and interest are now gone, and now he can finally live a little without the dreaded debt. He jumps up thinking that he is now free, but his body fails and he falls on the bed. Rakil realizes that something is wrong with his body, and he realizes that his body is much weaker than that of a 40-year-old man. He recalls that Rakil is the Crown Prince, a minor character who only appears for a short time. He was bedridden since childhood, and then at age 22 he died. The character asks the clerk how old he is, to which the clerk replies that he is now 21. The prince is thinking about how he really only had 1 year to live. He got the best medical care in this world, but it never helped him. He still died in the first half of the story because he couldn't beat his disease. He realizes that there is only one answer now. He asks the clerk to bring him needles, no matter what size. He asks to bring as many as he can. He decides to protect his body. He sits in a meditation posture and tries to feel the pulse. He lists 10 kinds of pulse: the intermittent pulse with skips, the pulse of a boiling cauldron, the point of Yuji, the flickering stone pulse, the pulse of an unraveled rope, the pulse of a leaky roof, the pulse of a floating shrimp, and the pulse of a pecking sparrow. They're all known as the 10 weird pulses. If there are symptoms of any of them, it means he has wounds and is probably sick right now. The doctor brings him the needles and he thanks him. He looks at the needles and realizes it's like he's in a club. He takes one needle and heats it with a candle. The doctor asks what he's going to do with those needles, to which the hero replies that he's going to poke his body a little. The doctor storms in on him and pulls his leg. He asks him to stop hurting himself and asks him to calm down, saying that he is a prince and should inherit the throne of the empire. But the hero pushes him away, saying he has a good reason. If nothing happens to him after he stabs his body, he wants the doctor to start trusting him. The hero says that if he insists, he'll believe him. The hero undresses and lies down on the bed. He realizes that if he wants to breathe normally, before doing anything further, he should start with 20 medians to do so. After all, it has the most to do with the lungs. This point, the pulmonary median of the arm, tane. He's poking at different points, such as the first lung, the cloud gate point, the upper gathering points of the hand. He reads that his body is responding positively to the acupuncture skills and the function of his internal organs has been restored. His lungs are dancing a dance, for they have begun to work again. The hero looks through his system windows, but the doctor looking at him doesn't understand. He must be going crazy, and he is crazy. The hero tells the doctor that he is not insane and that he is probably exaggerating. He decides to stick more needles in. The system gives him the good news that he is getting better and his gravity is gone. The needles begin to prick, and the doctor begins to pray for the man to regain his senses and regain his sanity. The hero looks at him with a strange face, not understanding what he wants. He decides to just finish his business. He uses different points to inject himself and is healed. The system tells him again that his circulatory system is better and that it's like his lungs are being massaged in a special chair. They don't give him health points like last time, but by poking at different points. The system finally tells him that the acupuncture treatment on the median of his left lung was successful. And finally, his lungs are doing the tap dance. Literally. They start dancing, and the hero feels it. He just can't sleep. The system alerts him that the organ responsible for defecating is synchronizing with his lungs and starts tap dancing. His colon is perfectly in rhythm, displaying an impressive wave motion. Finally, the hero accumulates 600 XP points, and he is prompted to open the skill list. He realizes that the skills here are like in a game where there's a sword and aura, or when he shoots fire from a staff. Are there really classic abilities here that are needed in the fantasy genre? He agrees and opens the list, to which he sees strange skills that clearly specialize in medicine. He realizes that these are skills he used on the job in a past life. The beginning of every treatment is a diagnosis, and only an accurate diagnosis can lead to the right treatment and the right drugs. He chooses number 1, pulse reading, an unlocked skill, and pays 500 XP for it. He scans his pulse, and the system gives him some very bad news, giving him a grade of F, and general opinion, SS rank trash, and gives him a life expectancy of 3 months and 1 day. And in a way, he didn't expect it. He realizes that if he inserts the needles in a clockwise direction and twirls them using the ossification and weakening method, he will exhale while he pulls out the needles using the respiratory augmentation and stun method. He sticks the needles in and the system gives him a notification that his life has been increased by 1 day. He decides to do the same for the other side, but he's bleeding. Apparently, he injured himself with that needle. He realizes that based on his current condition, he only needs to resort to this once every 3 days. In a nutshell, the body has low HP right now, and the message he just saw confirms the effectiveness of his methods, but it is the weakness of the body that is the problem. If he does it once every 3 days, he will have a 1-month increase in life expectancy. This is not enough, and he needs a more effective method. He realizes that the most effective would be to eat something, so he decides to ask for potions. He calls out decoctions, and the doctor asks him if he really wants him to bring them. The hero says he has such a request, and the one asks for an effective herb under the name of poisonous ingredients, aconite root. The doctor says it's not in the main palace, but they keep it anyway, since it's the residence of the crown prince. The prince asks for this root to be brought to him, and the doctor asks why he needs it, to which the latter declares that he will eat the poison root and asks him to bring it now. The latter pleads with him in tears not to eat it, but the prince declares that it is part of his cure and for him to stop whining and bring it here. The hero realizes that he can't make his way by force, so the prince tries to explain to the doctor what he knows about the root being poisonous. He says there are 2 kinds of root. He wants to eat the smaller one, which is known as daughter root. The active ingredient in the root can stop the heart, the doctor declares, to which the hero remarks that this is true, but he knows how he can neutralize the poison. In other words, he can make a cure out of it. Turn a poisonous plant into a medicine. It's called detoxification, the hero declares. After detoxification, the toxic properties of the root can become beneficial. The hero asks if he has convinced him, to which the man replies that no, he has never heard of such a thing, and doesn't know where this information came from or if it can be believed. However, he wants to help improve his health, and so he will bring him this root. The doctor recalls that his highness' body is rapidly weakening, and the fact that they're already desperate, as no treatment method has worked on him. And he decides to try detoxing instead. After the detox is over, he eats it first to make sure it's safe. The hero, meanwhile, has already gotten his root and tries to detox over it. The doctor picks up on the fact that there is a strange odor coming from the decoction. The hero asks if the doctor doesn't believe it is still safe, but the doctor is still afraid that the prince will be poisoned and asks him to come to his senses. The hero suggests that he try it first, to which the doctor states that it is a great idea. In the novel, Garden was very loyal. He was not originally a family doctor. Roughly speaking, he started out as the assistant family doctor, but even the doctors who were confident at first eventually left the prince's service, and at the end only Garden was left with Rakil. That's the kind of man he is. But in the end he was blamed for the death and execution of the prince. The hero realizes that he is sincere and he deserves a good life for his loyalty, but he won't share such delights even with him. He, having finally prepared the potion, looks at it, licking his lips. The doctor is ready to drink it, but the prince says he understands his haste, but he needs to wait. He needs to cool down first. The doctor asks how the hero got such knowledge of medicine. The hero thinks that if he gets in trouble if he doesn't realize that it's not Rakil in front of him. In that case, the hero says that he knows it from there, that the magician comes to him in his dreams every night and tells him how to heal. The doctor, surprisingly, believes him with a strange face, but the hero can't believe it, that the doctor believes such nonsense. The doctor is suspicious of this medicine and thinks it's too suspicious. Rakil stretches out his hands and is already preparing to drink it. And drinking every last drop, he licks his lips. He is haunted by the feeling that something big is coming. And the system responds to him that he has drunk a perfectly prepared decoction of ephedra, Ocantaveus aroma. The system also tells him that the daughter root has taken away the cold and pain from within, boosting his metabolism. His Astrakhan core energy has awakened. The system explains that this technique was created by the legendary master and knight known as Xavier Astrakhan and the aristocrat he served, Lloyd Frontera. This technique is only passed down to the most powerful heirs of the Maginotto Empire. It is a powerful technique, a symbol of the imperial family. And since the body belongs to the prince, this technique is available to him. A new skill is revealed to him, and he explains that this skill processes or increases the mana absorbed by the circle circulating mana around the heart. The hero feels as if a slippery spine is spinning around his heart, and what feels like life energy spreading throughout his body after each breath. He finally feels what mana feels like, but suddenly he grabs his heart, feeling as if something is about to burst. The doctor is already looking at him in fear, and the system tells him that the mana circle is putting too much pressure on his heart, and that the balance of heart growth and mana circle is out of balance. He runs the risk of cardiac arrest. The hero realizes that it is likely that the size of his heart does not fit the size of the mana circle. After all, Rakil has been sick since he was a child, and the fact that he hasn't had time to train his mana circle. And now that circle is squeezing his heart, like a ring that doesn't fit. In that case, the hero decides there is one way out, since he can't reduce the size of his heart, so he'll increase the size of the circle. Rakil moved into his subconscious, as if moving inward into his body at the same time. He moves to his heart and creates threads of mana and pulls the circle to make it enlarge. He also makes it spin furiously, but feels like he might pass out. He thinks back to the pain he felt in Korea and the fact that his clinic was supposedly infected with the coronavirus. He lost all his patients and even started going bald due to the stress. Added to this were the rent, loans, and rising interest rates. He even downgraded his house to pay it off. He procrastinates and says to underestimate the doctor, then dramatically unwinds the ring, saying that he is the business owner from Korea. Manu's ring enlarges and his heart is successfully released, and immediately he is already met by the doctor. And the system says that thanks to the positive stimulation, his heart is back to full strength. Rakil collapses abruptly afterward. The doctor doesn't realize if he's alright and approaches him, asking. Meanwhile, in his body, his heart arrives for the party and his lungs taunt him, and he greets them, saying they must be waiting by now. Rakil apologizes to his lungs for having such a shabby body, and the system informs him that the balance of heart growth and mana circle has come back to normal, and that he is the first person in history to get a magic circle slot. The hero realizes that a slot is like a space in his inventory. The doctor beckons him over, and he stands up abruptly, asking what the man wanted. And the doctor realizes that he is now full of life. He asks what it was then because the doctor thought he was in a lot of pain. He asks if it was a side effect of the medicine. The hero replies that he just choked on it and the fact that it was stuck in there. The doctor says that it looked like he was in danger, and the fact that it looked like that is what he thought he should drink first. Rakil asks if he really wants to drink the poison that badly. He will give him a chance next time. He says that if he doesn't want it, let him clean up and he will go rest, after which he thanks him. The doctor gets even more worried because he went to rest. He's probably been poisoned again, isn't he? But Rakil now realized that he might have gotten his hands on something incredible. A mana slot is a technique that stores materials mixed with mana, and there are 10 liters in each slot. They can be accumulated by absorbing them, so he can replenish a slot if he consumes something. He thinks about what he can try to eat, and realizes that water is perfect for such experiments. He takes a special container that clearly has 2 liters in it, and he remembers the average lethal dosage. It's a term used in determining the degree of poisonousness of a substance. It's the amount of a substance that can kill 50% of the test subjects. Simply put, the chance of dying is 50%. And if it doesn't die, it will cause a lot of pain or become common. At 60 kilograms, the average lethal dose is 5.5 liters of water, but with his weight, it's about 3.9 liters. He lifts this container and it feels very heavy to him because his body is very weak. He starts to drink all of it in one gulp, and he wants to set aside the water he is about to drink. He sees a notification from the system that everything is accumulating, and the hero doesn't even feel like he's drunk. He drinks 4 more containers and still doesn't feel anything. He has 0.1 liter of water left, and he realizes he's just like a camel. He can drink any amount of water once. The hero thinks about what he will do if he wants to try some decoction. He will die immediately if he tries to release 9.9 liters of water. He thinks about it and realizes that he is using the core technique. He now specializes in absorbing, amplifying, and releasing mana. He releases it directly from his body, using the amplification technique to release it. He creates a semblance of a rosing and out of water, and now he needs to place it in a jug. He shoots the jug and it simply shatters. Apparently, the hero created magic directly from what he drank. He doesn't realize what it was, and he doesn't understand why it happened. He had planned to pour a little bit at a time, just like from the tap, but the mana turned into a water cannon. The guards are already running in, all guns blazing, shouting that a loud sound came from the prince's bedroom. They rush in, and immediately the doctor starts yelling about being very worried. But Rakil says he's fine and that it's not like that. He's thinking about how he can get away with it this time. He says that he broke the jug on the table when he got angry, which is why it made a loud noise. He realizes they probably don't believe it. It even sounded stupid, but the guards understand. Is he injured after breaking the jug? And the hero can't even believe they believe this nonsense. The guards ask Garden's doctor to take him to the second bedroom. Rakil thinks his excuse was rather suspicious, but it worked. Now the doctor is carrying our hero on his back. He thinks about the fact that they probably believed it because he is the crown prince. The doctor finally brings him to the second bedroom and is already all tired standing in front of him, asking him to rest. Rakil is half full of the doctor and tells him to rest as well, then looks at his hand and begins to think about the fact that the circles of his mana and the median around his heart all rushed through his hand with amplification and release, and the result was a burst that was filled with energy. He should get some sleep before he caused more trouble for himself. Meanwhile, we see that the doctor has appeared before the king. He tells the king that Prince Rakil tried to harm himself with needles and poison. The king is very angry and is ready to deal with him. After Rakil has rested, he immediately begins to prepare a potion for himself. He finishes making 10 liters of the special potion. He asks Garden to leave the room. He thinks about how he will faint if the doctor sees him drinking it all at once. He says it won't be long and he'll need to do some things while he's alone. The doctor looks at him disdainfully and says he will drink the decoction again, asking if he wasn't in a lot of pain last time. But the prince explains that he just choked on it. The doctor shares that he is very worried about him as they have prepared a lot of decoction this time. And the prince says that he will drink just a little bit for the experiment, as he doesn't want to throw it away entirely since the doctor has worked so hard. The doctor will feel over his head, as if modestly. And now the prince finally reassures him. He says he won't even be able to drink it all. The doctor says only fools would do such a thing. And they both laugh at the situation. The prince then kicks the doctor out, slamming the door. After heading to the potion, picking it up and drinking it all in a gulp, he says it went down well. He sets out to experiment. He decides to release everything little by little. Gradually in the course of his life, he releases some amount of decoction. Usually it's 0.1 liters. The system keeps telling him the good news that his organs are ecstatic and he is getting HP in him. He decides he needs to increase his longevity. The release keeps going on, and he gets XP points for it all. The events are transferred to Rakil's body, and the heart asks what the intestine is for their lunch today, and he again tells him that it is the decoction that the master drank. Every day he asks, he hopes there will be something else, but the man says that they will always have the decoction for lunch and dinner, and every day they will eat only with it. The system, meanwhile, reports that his internal organs are fed up with the ephedra decoction. He thinks about how it would be better if the organs drank what they were given. Constantly releasing, looks at the system's notifications. His life expectancy has increased by 50 days. It finally worked. He jumps up dramatically, delighted at the news. The maid even nearly falls over from it, and the prince apologizes for startling her. The maid abruptly apologizes for breaking the mug. The prince wonders if she hurt herself, and the maid says it won't happen again and asks him not to whip her again like last time. The prince asks if he's ever done that before. She tells him he hasn't, but he gave the order, and the hero realizes that apparently the prince was quite the tyrant. He declares with a smile on his face, but a bit broken, that she should clean up and go. The maid cheerfully thanks him and leaves. He thinks about how the look on her face was just something with something. The prince tells him that his memory has been a bit of a blur lately and asks him to tell him what kind of person he is towards him and the servants. The doctor immediately prepares to lie with a smile, but the man says that if he flatters, the prince will drink all the poison before his eyes. The doctor is horrified and says there's nothing he can do then, and begins to tell the truth. That he usually just beat everyone for some misdemeanor, then with a whip, then on the hands, then with the hands themselves. The protagonist doesn't understand why Rakil was doing that. And he recalls the situation when the servants believed in that ridiculous excuse, because he was crazy from the beginning. The prince asks Sir Garden why he is not afraid of him, since he is the closest to him, so he is the one who has suffered the most. The doctor says he trusts him more than he trusts anyone. He says he knows what he's really like. We are transported back to an old memory, as a still young doctor was out in the rain near the castle he served in. He saw Rakil under a tree carefully sheltering a bird from a raindrop. The doctor looked at him with a smile, and now he told him that it was because he had cured his illness that he had decided to bring back the real him, and lately his faith had justified himself. Rakil with a smile finally thanks him. Rakil asks if he likes the way he is changing. so he decides to give the doctor the reward of eating one sweet of any kind. Rakil thinks about the fact that he now swears on Rakil's name that he will not allow him to be executed for dying. He decides to firmly survive in this world, but then a clerk bursts in on him. He beckons him over and says what the king himself has summoned him to say. The events are transferred to a huge castle. The hero is enveloped by the rays of the sun. He enters the throne room and realizes that something terrible is about to happen. The prince appears before the king, kneeling, and saying that he expresses his true respect for the ruler of the land. The king, watching this, makes a characteristic sound. This man is Astelion Testarossa Magentano, ruler of the great Magentano Empire. The king, looking at the hero, detects in him the awakened energy of Astrakhan. He thought he was weak, and sensing the energy, he is very surprised at the fact that he has become stronger. The prince trembles, and the king begins to sense that he is nervous in his presence, and begins to think that he was actually wrong about the prince. Haha, it's just that the hero's leg is stiff and that's why his whole body is shaking. It would be nice if he could say something to make the hero stop shaking and get up. The king asks the hero if he is satisfied with his life in his own palace, and he replies that he is. He is surprised. Is the king seriously going to talk to him while he is on his knee? The king says that he was told that he was stabbing himself with needles and drinking poison. The king asks if the information that was reported to him is true. The prince realizes that if he says yes, he'll be in trouble. He says no. The king says he is a fool, and has he forgotten that he is the heir to the imperial family? The prince is an honorary member of the royal bloodline. The king also asks him not to lose his dignity. The prince bowed his head without uttering a single word. With a smirk, the king begins to tell him that if he does not have the strength to lift and wear the crown because of his health, is it not better to make a wise decision? The king is clearly implying that the prince should give up the idea of leading the throne. The king, looking down at the hero, tells him that he's not going to stay in one place for long, going around and around. He tells the hero to give up the title of crown prince in favor of his brother, who is the second prince of the dynasty. The hero looks at him, widening his eyes. He is clearly surprised. He assumed he meant something else. The prince apologizes to the king, preparing to say something intriguing. But immediately, abruptly, with a smile on his face, he refuses his offer. The king clenches his fist. He asks how such a mutt refuses, and how dare he cross him. The hero says that the king got it right. His pressure is great, but he need not fear, for the reason for his words is quite obvious. He doesn't need his consent to strip him of his title. He realizes there's no point in asking the prince himself. He realizes that if he were to give up the throne, he would be considered a foolish fool. He would be showing morality in recognition of his brother, who is truly worthy of the title of crown prince. This is a rather cunning political move. The hero realizes that his strength and reliability as a ruler is now under huge such question, but he decides not to give up without a fight. The king is probably angry right now. The king grits his teeth and gets down from his chair. He steps down and asks, does the prince not respect his decision? The king had no idea that his title of crown prince meant so much to our hero. Again, looking down at the hero, he asks, does he really want to dishonor him and the entire royal family? But the hero thinks he doesn't care. He would gladly pass on the title and enjoy the endless riches and comforts of life. The hero recalls, in the novel, as the second prince rose to the throne, the whole country failed and eventually came to an end. In the novel, he was considered a genius, conscientious and gifted, but when the era of chaos came, he proved to be a disappointment and was ill-equipped to deal with such a mess. Under his rule, everything fell, empire and family. The hero must prevent the fall. He must do everything he can to prevent such an eventuality. The hero, rising from his knees, says he's weak. Yes, that's true. But he has intelligence and wisdom. He doesn't need this pathetic title. He only cares about the well-being and peace of his family. The king says that his words were spoken beautifully enough, and the hero insists that they are not just empty and beautiful words. He turns to the king, saying that he wants to ask him for a favor. He looks into the king's eyes and asks him to give him a chance. He wants to prove that he is the best contender for the crown. After all the events, the hero goes back to his room. He is immediately pursued by his faithful servant and asked what he called him back to his room for. Hero says with a smile that it was nothing. He wanted him to give up the title of crown prince and hand it over to the second prince of the empire. The doctor gets a 220-volt shock, making his face as if he was at fault. It's true. The prince proudly waves his hand, saying he refused the king. The servant covers his mouth, thinking that he clearly did something he shouldn't have. And our prince excitedly thumbs up and declares he proposed a duel with the second prince for the title of crown prince. The hero turns around, asking the clerk what he's doing. Meanwhile, Garden is already packing his things. Soon he will have to leave this place. The king is standing in his chambers. We see him looking out the window and thinking about something. The king thinks that Hero wants a chance to prove that he deserves his place more than his brother. He ponders, is there really a side to Hero's personality that is willing to stand up for himself? and saying he's looking forward to it revels in evil laughter. Meanwhile, the hero tries to persuade poor Garden to stay home, ha ha ha. Events move to the bridge where the duel between the two brothers will take place. Each side has posted posts with guards, and the flags of their state are already developing on the bridge itself. Many important dignitaries and equally important aristocrats have gathered. The king looks at all of this with a clear sense of tension. It's not every day that two of your offspring lock swords in battle. Our hero is already preparing for battle, with his servant Garden standing beside him. The hero stretches and prepares to dust his enemy. From the words of Prince Theodore's groupies, we learn his name. They are clearly confident of his victory, not doubting it for a moment. They are already imagining the outcome of the victory, and how he will brilliantly finish his fight. The hero hears Theodore approaching him, preparing to say something, and immediately turns his head toward him. Theodore calls the hero first brother and then crown prince, clearly implying that he doesn't really need that status. He asks him not to start the duel, saying he doesn't need to do that. Yeah, you got that right. This guy is Theodore Palermo Magentano, second prince of the Magentano Empire. But Theodore's face changes. He says he hates to tell you this, but it's obvious to everyone here how their fight will end. The hero rises, exuding confidence. He asks if it is known. Is he so sure of his victory? Theodore asks if it is true what His Majesty said about him suggesting a duel to give him more rights to the throne. The hero doesn't understand what kind of foolishness this is. Theodore, receiving psychic damage, says it's clear what the result will be. He says he doesn't want to ruin his health by putting him at great risk. He thinks the man has decided to sacrifice himself for him. The hero smiles, saying it looks like they're both wrong. The hero's servant pulls out a haha police shield and gives it to the hero. He reaches out and the servant hooks it onto the prince's arm. The shield falls, making the characteristic PDSH sound. The spectators look at this spectacle with great amazement. The king has also opened his eyes and can't tear his eyes away. Theodore is also a bit shocked by what he sees, and hero declares that he has no intention of losing. Meanwhile, the crowd discusses that the crown prince is very strange. The second prince has a Corvus Arachne with one circle, and he is also learning swordsmanship from a famous knight. As we understand, the audience clearly do not believe in our protagonist. They think he's only capable of pulling pranks. Meanwhile, the servant recalls their conversation with the hero. When the hero was practicing in his chambers and preparing for the upcoming battle, he could not believe that the prince was going to fight the second prince. He tried to change his mind, but the man intended to win from the start. The servant again tried to object, but the prince started to say that no one expected anything from him, so the pressure would be minimal. But then the servant cries out that he believes he will win. The prince asks the servant if he is ashamed to tell a lie and not blush. The servant freezes with a completely serious face. The hero silently stops practicing. He stares at the floor and then turns to the servant. He excitedly declares that if he can withstand three blows, he will easily win. Events shift back to the battlefield. The servant is in the crowd, hearing the noise of the crowd. He silently folds his hands in a lock and as if praying to God that the prince will not be harmed in the fight with the second prince. The hero begins to tell all the people, aristocrats in the area, that today's battle will determine who is worthy to ascend to the great throne. The commoners look at the king waiting for something else, and he starts to announce the rules. If the crown prince lasts 5 minutes in battle or defense, he wins. Otherwise, the other prince, who has already drawn his sword, wins. They prepare for battle. The second prince mentally addresses his brother. Brother, since it has come to this, I'm going to end it as soon as possible. The king announces the start of the battle and the start of the duel. The hero immediately drops his sword to the floor. The king freezes. He clearly did not expect this. He looks at him with disdain, clearly uncomfortable. The crowd begins to murmur. What? Is it really over already? It's just a horrible sight. Theodore relaxes. He asks if the prince has given up. He thinks it's a great relief for him, for he would have found it hard to raise a sword against a sick man. Though he can't even believe he surrendered in front of all the people. He thinks of the shame it is for their family. Theodore begins to ponder. Should he talk to him and inspire him to continue their matchmaking? Theodore feels emotion and mentally struggles with the fact that he cannot maim a sick man, but his father's gaze that shines upon them prevents him from recognizing the torment of his conscience. But it turns out that it was all a complete delusion. The hero only takes his shield, which for some reason looks so much like a policeman's. Tough. He strengthens his defenses, getting behind it completely. Theodore realizes he chose defense to defend himself against a half-hearted attack. Yeah, that's right, his goal is to last 5 minutes, not to overpower Theodore. Theodore decides that this is a bold choice on the prince's part, and he decides to deal with it quickly. Theodore focuses, red energy covers him and his heart begins to beat faster. It feels like he's preparing for his strongest lunge. And, yes, he is. He opens his eyes and immediately lunges towards his opponent. His lunge is filled with tremendous power, and in a flash he is in front of the prince, ready to strike his strongest blow. The prince reacts and puts up his shield, trying to defend himself against the attack. The king thinks that the power of this attack is enough to destroy the shield. There's weight, strength, even magical power and mana put into this attack. The shield simply cannot withstand it. But, as it happens, calculations are not always an exact version of the end. It withstands the attack at first. The smoke from the attack envelopes Theodore, and Theodore pleads with his brother not to fall from the attack or he will make a fool of himself. And even if he loses, Theodore mentally pleads with him to do it with dignity, kneeling rather than falling. Theodore deliberately starts with an overhead kick. The prince's silhouette appears, and we see that this blow didn't even come close to hurting the hero, and he is still standing on his feet with his shield intact. Theodore panics. What? Did he just duck? The crowd looks on in great amazement, as if they've seen a dragon in the middle of space. The citizens can't believe that a weak, frail prince in the past was able to defend himself against Theodore's blow. The king sits in complete shock as he looks on, clearly not expecting such an outcome in the past. The crowd still thinks that the second prince is very kind and took pity on him because of his kindness. The prince's gaze settles on Theodore, and he senses that what happened was not simple luck. He, saying that it doesn't change anything, gets even angrier and clenches his sword harder, transferring even more magical power into it. Theodore again tries his strongest lunge, but the hero blocks it again. Red mana remains behind the trail. We realize that he put even more magical power, but it doesn't help Theodore a bit. Around the shield of the protagonist is hovering blue energy absorb the invested mana in red. Apparently the hero is also not a bad guy and uses his abilities to block blows. The two brothers are locked in battle, and now we can see that they are not ready to retreat. With even more force, Theodore finally more or less successfully completes his lunge. The hero flies away from him at a great distance, barely surviving the blow. The hero has successfully blocked, but now he is off his knees. His condition is clearly worse than before. He is dizzy and his wrist is numb, so it will be harder for him to block now. He thinks back to his past life. When he was a cop, he had to defend himself against everything. This blow is nothing. The prince goes completely on the defensive again, hiding behind his shield. Theodore, meanwhile, recharges his energy again and prepares to attack. Theodore attacks once, trying to break through the defense. He absorbs mana more than he thought. But since that's the case, our hero's secret plan will work even better. The hero tells the prince that he doesn't understand what he's up to. The hero and the other prince synchronously shout that now is the moment. Theodore jumps and makes an overhead attack, landing and making a huge blow to the shield. The shield again absorbs the entire attack. The hero thinks about the fact that he trained his lower body for this very purpose. By training his internal organs, he was able to raise his body's overall rating to D rank, remembering that this shield was custom made by the blacksmith of his own palace. Also, a special mixture was made for his cute little brother, which he diligently placed in the inventory slots of his mana ring. He uses the slot withdrawal function and releases 0.2 liters of liquid out of himself. The energy overflows into Theodore and the crowd freezes, followed by himself and the greatest king of this nation. It turns out that Theodore is intoxicated. He's got the hiccups. Well, we stopped at this interesting point. If you want the next part, let's get 1,000 likes. And also write in the comments the secret word, Prince. That way I'll know you've seen this video to the end. That's all for now. See you later and bye-bye.